Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. It's Dr. Contrast Live. I hope everybody's doing well today, and I just thought good to have you on board. Those of you who might be tuning in just a little bit here, and just want to bring up to speed on some things here. Some time ago, we did a little study on some theme park design, like a conceptual piece, and it's my hope that as time moves on here, that I'll become part of the process and be part of the design team in putting this whole program together. So what I thought we'd do today is go back and revisit some of this landscape architectural theme studies, which I think is an intriguing discipline. I've really said this before, and I'll say it again. I think it's one of the most unique opportunities to deal with in the design world, because it's such an enormous opportunity to work with a different variety of individuals, textures, people, sciences, etc. Very unique all the way around. So I just thought I'd bring these sketches back to review here just a little bit, and we'll go back into some detail work throughout the course of the time that we spend here together. Interesting that these are a series of just overall site plan sketches, and just to bring up to speed again, so we know where we are here. It's a very elaborate, I think, piece of land. For example, it's about 1,100 feet in length from major highway or thoroughfare in the city to another little subdivisional area over here, and then a subdivision run a street coming right through the actual process itself. And there's also an intersection of another avenue coming into it. So there's a lot of opportunity to take advantage of some very unique things to deal with in terms of design. Pardon me, but again, the overall length of about 1,100 feet, at its widest point about 500 feet. And if you notice here, the current site is fairly flat. There's a little bit of elevation study here that you'll see as we go through the process here of reviewing some of these update sketches that I've been putting together for this whole process. But I think the main thing that we're trying to look at here, the conversation, was to get some sort of a unique way of entering this whole park site, as opposed to the traditional straightforward anthem into an area, a tribute area of some sort, or a gathering place of some fashion, but looking at a different approach. And I think what I came up with over the past few weeks was what I refer to as the pinwheel concept, and this is not a very good variation of it here, but the idea was to get into, for example, coming into an area, coming up to an area, maybe it's a piece of sculpture or a memorable piece of some sort that the park visitors can begin to look at or enter into, and then coming out of that, spinning into the retail area, and then coming up out of this and spinning into the walkway into the park itself, which gets into a lot of different areas. For example, if you notice that the terracotta piece really highlights, for example, where the primary walkway in the park is going to be. Off of that, you'll see the offshoots of these little sidewalk tendrils that come in and take you into different areas of the park itself, into the retail area, back in the southern end of it. Parking also becomes availability. Some screening, for example, with trees along the main boulevard in the area. So there's a lot of little textural pieces that come together in this that was really intriguing from the point of view of putting together a very lasting piece of architecture, or a statement made in this new park that's going to hopefully be built in time to come here. Boy, pardon me. Then also, a lot of foliage, for example. There's a primary group of trees that go through the site now, and I don't know if they're going to keep that or not, or if it's going to be part of the process as we go forward. I would prefer, for example, I've seen them. I don't think it's really applicable to keep them. We can do a nicer job of addressing some of the foliage and tree areas, larger trees. We kind of subdivide or split the park, maybe open it up instead of going vertically into the river area. We go horizontally to maintain the theme here. Also, you look at, for example, some plaza space along the riverfront for maybe venues in the summertime, for example, the 4th of July fireworks display, boat parades, all those kinds of things going on. Seating benches along the way for people to rest and sit and view the landscape or whatever. And again, another little amphitheater area back and through here for, again, public gathering pieces. So this is the first sketch I did based on that whole concept of this pinwheel. So the second one we did, I'll just put it off to one side here for a moment. Lord, pardon me. The second one we did was a little bit more of a much cleaner approach to getting this piece put together. Notice how the pinwheel starts to really begin to activate itself, and it looks less forced. I think that's the thing that I like about it, as opposed to look at how this one comes together here. You've got almost like a dog leg going into this concept, or this focal point area, and coming out of it's a little bit clumsy, and just really thought that, well, let's take another look at this. Boy, pardon me just for a moment here. There we go. Coming out of this a little bit cleaner with the fact that, notice, we still have the same set of circumstances with a major thoroughfare, residential street, but again, a little bit of an entry piece here, coming back into this primary spot where you come in, into this tribute or this concept area, but you can go out of it into the retail space and then come back through it again and through the entire park system and get into this split of some sorts, and all the ways along that we're along the way here, looking at maybe add some separate plantings, some smaller trees, getting these primary, these little secondary pieces, for example, through here are all secondary sidewalks along the way, along the riverfront. So it's a lot more accessible in terms of putting the pieces together, but I just thought it was a cleaner approach in here to really do this pinwheel justice. And I think the nice thing about it is, too, it could be slightly elevated as you come into it, walk around it, and go through it around. And it's a much more inviting, I think, approach to a park entrance that I've not seen before. And again, with foliage and parking being considered. So that was the second sketch we did. And let's put that aside here. Then the third variation was a little bit more of an expansive piece, maybe eliminating the pinwheel, but having the same basic concept where we have this entry coming in and picking up that launch into the actual tribute area around it and back into the retail space. In this case, it's up against the river, so to speak, and then this little area here comes back in with some benching along the way. Again, the amphitheater is now switched over to almost Central Park theme itself, where it's got some cascading into the riverfront for viewing area, and at the other end, maybe an interesting little feature in time to come, if people consider it, would be an amphitheater of some sort for, let's say, concerts or summer out gatherings or educational programs along the way that they could utilize in this park area. And also, you see this very sculptural looking areas, a lot of different plantings and certain things will be put in those areas to kind of flatter the idea of putting together this whole concept for this very unique park system here. And the last one I did was this. I just came back and I thought, well, let's take a look at what this, boy, I'm sorry for this confusion here, what this pinwheel might look like. Again, it's exaggerated as far as height is concerned. I just want to make sure that the people understood that you're coming into this thing, you're entering it, and you're lofting up to this very high point where this focal point would be. Then you have a choice of going back into the retail area, which is off to the north, or back into the park area to go through the entire walkway piece, and also showing a little bit of this pavilion area as it goes through the entire process as well. So that gives you a bit of an overview about where we were some time ago, and we didn't really get an explanation in concert here about clarifying what the actual theme was. And I think, again, looking at the thing that I thought was the most unique was this idea of this whole pinwheel concept, which I thought was really unique. And then again, they're going to play off of this one here for the duration of the time we spend here together, this architectural piece. So once that's established, or when I established those sketches, I'm going to head into some areas here that I thought might be more applicable in terms of getting into, let's say, entryways or gateways. Let me just kind of bring these over to sketch, and we'll look at these as well. So the next set of sketches I put together were things like this. Again, we looked at, these are really quick little pencil sketches based on some basic theme studies on how we deal with, for example, foliage, entryways, towers or pillars, plaza spaces, and everything that became part of the process of putting together some sort of an entryway. That could, for example, those entryway features, let me bring this one up we're looking at here. These could also begin to look into areas, not only in the entryway area here, let's just do this, not only in the entryway area, in this area here, but throughout the entire park. You have certain monuments or certain pieces along the way that could begin to foretell what we want to do with this piece. Let me just get these all organized, and we'll get those standing up here a little bit. There is a reference, there we are. So again, I always like to go back and just kind of reconfigure certain things. Once the overall site plan, as we just showed you, is pretty well underway as far as the theme and concept and approval for the idea, it's nice to go back in and say, all right, what are we going to put into these things? What kind of a gateway do we look at? What kind of entryway are we looking for? So I'll go through a series of real quick, rapid studies here. For example, in plan view, for example, a monument itself or a tower of some sort, an obelisk. Maybe it's surrounded with trees and a bit of a wall planting behind it. It's elevated like we're showing you here. Also down below, same thing. Maybe it's got steps to it. You go up to and look at it. For example, it's got some information on it as to what, maybe directional information within the park itself. So that's interesting to kind of deal with. So there's the first pass at doing some little, as I said, gateway or entryway pieces. Once you come into the facility, what are we going to look at here? Another little sketch here is this, where we actually slowed this down just a little bit and just looking at certain plan views about what might be intriguing for the actual piece of informational kiosk of some sort, where you've got a basic tower, some insert pieces that can be interchangeable with signage and the like, and then come back in with, for example, I went to from their elevation into some variations on theme on the tower, and just looking at maybe some neat ways of incorporating a plan view. Again, notice trying to pick up that same theme of the pinwheel in some of the information kiosk work that we've got here. Also, again, another plan view study, a little bit of variation of the theme here. Again, maybe it's a little bit of foliage, a wall system into the actual tower itself as an info kiosk, and back out of it again. So that's a second set of sketches. Then a third set of sketches going a little bit more in detail, for example, stretching it out a little bit more. Maybe it's historic in some sense. We put a little wall up there, and maybe a little plan view pattern of some sort. Maybe a series of walls going into this kiosk or this tower that we might look like this in elevation. And again, it's just stretching instead of having the pinwheel so much as part of the theme stuff part here. Maybe a little bit more vertical in terms of coming into a wall, into this actual tower. For information seeking and directional information, then back out of it again, and going a little bit further with this. Let's kind of get these sketches put together. Now, get a little more detail, switching gears, going back in and saying, all right, what do we have a theme here? What do we put together some concept work in terms of how we want to deal with the wall structures, and what kind of materials are we going to employ for maybe it's sandstone, maybe it's glass, it could be shingled, very traditional looking colonial piece, for example, that comes in. Maybe that's part of the whole, that could be part of an information kiosk of some sort, or a welcome center within the park itself. And that again would all happen, I'll bring this sketch up in a moment here, that would all happen throughout some areas. Let's bring it up just for good measure here. That might come in, for example, into play. These thumbnail sketches might come into play somewhere along the park here to give you some indication about maybe it's a resting area, maybe it's directional, it could be a theme-based piece, maybe it's different aspects of the park they want to develop into and how to work with it. So those are extremely valuable things to deal with, I think, in terms of putting together a plan such as this, and it's so expansive and so pervasive in terms of opportunities about what to do with it, how to begin to develop it, what's going to go into it. There's a lot of different things to deal with, signage, information, directional pieces, gateways, entryway pieces, historical things. I mean, it's overwhelming in terms of information, which I think is unique too. Don't misunderstand about the overwhelming factor. To me, it's unique in terms of being able to understand that when you get into something like this, like a major park design for a major city, it really takes an awful lot of time and research, and then working back and forth in communication with the individuals you're working with. So it doesn't come from me, so to speak. It comes from a lot of communication back and forth about what about this and what about this? Should we include this or should we exclude this? And what's important, what's vital, what's really necessary? How do we put this whole process together? So these sketches that you're looking at, from my point of view, are taking the chance of saying, what if, for example, this park becomes a reality, and it will be, it'll become a reality, and we've got a pinwheel theme, we've got a good plan view study for the overall site of the park. And what kind of features are we going to put into it? Do we want to go traditional? Do we want to be very simplistic? Is it adventuresome? Is it more theme related? What kind of themes are we going to employ? All these things become part of the process in the design system here. So I think we're looking at, in this particular case, again, little modules of getting into, for example, wooden systems, into stone, into trees again, maybe very simple, straightforward. Maybe this could be an introduction piece into the retail part of the park itself, or basic signs. Maybe this is an entry piece down here. Welcome to such and such a park, and we go in, enter the park, and take advantage of some of the sites and some of the design details that are being implemented within the system. So there's another way of looking at details in terms of once the theme is down, I'm going to come back and really kind of be much more focused on what parts of the program are we going to dedicate to certain things, and what are those materials going to look like? Are they traditional like this? Are they avant-garde? Are they contemporary? I'll show you that just a few moments here as we go down the line. So there's one little pass of studies, and there's another theme, for example. Maybe the tower is a little bit taller in terms of scale and has flag signage on it. Maybe it's illuminated, and there's a copper piece, for example, is almost like a triangular piece to give you a little bit more of an old English feel of some sort, if that's part of the character they're after. Another approach to this is getting into lighting and signage, and maybe this is a postal design of some sort that begins to tell the viewer coming in that there's an entry area here. There might be a sign put into this. It could be that window can be replaced with signage. Again, the possibility for me is, from a conceptual point of view, is to really stretch the envelope and develop a lot of unique thinking things. Not that they're going to be utilized or put into the system itself, but to give the client the variety of information that they need to see. And again, these sketches, to me, are extremely tailored. They don't take an awful lot of time to do, but they take an awful lot of time in the research side of it. What's out there? What should we look at? What's the basic theme of the park itself? Does it follow suit with that theme? All these things have to be taken into account. So there's maybe the first wave of, once we go through, let me bring this back again just for reference. Once we go through the settlement of having this, let's do this. Let's get this out of the way just for a moment here. Once we have a good understanding of what the basic overall theme is going to look like and what the shapes are going to do with this pinwheel process, that's the overall thrust. I mean, that to me is extremely critical. It's been a good adventure to get this all put together. Really well liked. The overall character was unique enough. They certainly wanted it to become very fluid and organic. They wanted to be very unique in terms of entry egress, which was, I think, this pinwheel I've not seen before. That's and to elevate it and have it utilized. It does two things, quite frankly. It elevates the fact that you've got some sort of a tribute or some sort of a theme piece in this as a focal point here. But at the same time, you've got something here that really kind of remedies a handicap situation where it's ramped a little bit so people don't have to worry about going up steps or into an incline of some sort, but it's all ramped and slowly, it's a slow grade to get it up to a certain height. As I showed in that one sketch there, that little detailed three-quarter perspective. So I think that to me is critical. Very, very fundamental. Once that was arrested, now we came out of it to get to the rest of the park. How do we going to create this snake-like or this very organic pattern in the park itself to create this illusion of having a really good formal piece? And again, the contour you'll see here in time to come as we develop this system further, you'll see much more contour in terms of where the highs and lows are. Maybe we build mounding or walls of some sort to separate certain areas. That's the reason for going into the sketches like we just showed you. Let me put that aside here for a moment. That's why we really went back into sketches like this, where we begin to show you what these little details are going to look like in terms of certain parts of the park. Are they going to be more traditional? Are they going to be very formal looking? What's the actual nature of this thing going to look like? So that was the first pass of getting in some little, what I refer to as like wayfinding or signage systems. Or directional pieces. So that would be phase one. Then I'm going to look at, let's bring some of these guys in here. Then we'll look at, for example, what does it look like for lighting? This is kind of unique in a sense. Look at these guys. We put these sketches together here and get some of the glare off of that. These are some studies basically put together for the purpose of getting into a very preliminary tower of some sort. Maybe there's a tower that sits in the focal point that becomes a beacon, for example, for people coming in to view the site or trying to locate the site that could be illuminated at night, for example. These are evening type sketches. But notice the character of the lighting itself is a little bit of a different departure from what you've just seen in some of the entryway pieces. What that began to look like, what I wanted to look at here was doing something that's a little more space frame related. Maybe it's all open air, it's all powder coated steel of some sort that has a structure to it or a lattice about it. Why? Because the interesting thing is you can change the signage, for example. You can make it video board related as well. Some of these studies, let's put these out one by one here. Let's do this for a moment. Some of these studies, for example, when you look at these, it's tailor-made for like video boarding pieces or informational kiosk areas where they can come in, for example, look at what the history of the park is, what the history of the area is, and maybe it's events related. And again, I think it's going to be part of the signage program. But again, different variations of how to treat some sort of a signature tower that tells the viewer or the individuals who are visiting the city to come in and look at this park. It's a bit more unique, and it's a little more adventuresome, but I think it could stand that. And again, these are sketches that are just done to be treated as what ifs in conceptual areas of lighting, signage, etc. Sorry to be redundant here, but again, I really believe in the wholeheartedness of separating ourselves out, becoming a little bit more unique in terms of creating ideas, and not so trapped into being so traditional that it becomes predictable. That's the one thing I really like to avoid if it's at all possible. And my responsibility here is to really begin to stretch the envelope and get people to think in terms of new ways to develop a very highlighted area that has a very strong heritage, but at the same time really recognizes the fact that we've honored the area, we've honored the ground rules, we've honored some of the circumstances, we've met the materials we request. All that's been honored, but it's been done in a very unique fashion, which makes it so much more interesting and so much more marketable. Because again, let's face it, at some point in time, this is going to become a funding operation, and my sketches are going to help hopefully fund that operation to get these things done. So I want to step out there in good faith to do a terrific job in terms of giving the client, for example, these individuals, everything we can in terms of possibilities of how we can treat certain things with a good cost parameter in mind as well. It's not spending yourself into oblivion, but being unique enough to say that, you know, we could do this for this amount of money, or this could be done financially for this stability case. So here, that's one approach. This is a much taller tower, and notice, I don't know if you can see it here on the screen at all, there are very faint systems here, for example, behind that. Those can be just light towers, for example, almost playing off the same thing like the 9/11 piece, where you've got these monumental towers at night that can kind of light this place up, and then visitors coming in to the city could see this from some considerable distance and say, oh, that's a unique little feature. Wonder what that is. Again, creating this intrigue or draw to get people to come into the park itself. So there's the second phase of this. First phase was, let's get the theme down, the overall site plan. The second phase was getting into entry-level detail and signage pieces. The third detail will be lighting possibilities, and there's more to it as we go here. So that becomes lighting. Then the other aspect we looked at was what I thought was unique about this site, and I'll just kind of pare these down here for a moment here. Let's kind of put this off to one side here. What I thought was unique about this site was the fact that it's bounded. Let's go back and bring this up to speed here for a moment. What's interesting about, to me, very unique, is it's bound by a river, and there are two major thoroughfares that cross the river that they're heading east-west. What I thought would be really interesting to look at as a possibility for this park, in addition to all the things we're talking about here, and we'll carry on with in a few moments here, is this. What if we went into a system where all of a sudden we did these sky bridges or facelifted across the river, unique ways of building a bridge? And these are simple little studies, for example, river level down here, river level down here. But these are half-section studies based on potential bridges that could go across those major avenues that go east-west across the river. So here's some real quick little, very handcrafted, quick sketches on how to put suspension bridges, for example. Notice maybe it's arched, maybe it has the same pillar theme or concept theme that the park might have, and inboard that might have certain things like a roof structure across it. It becomes much more Old English type. We don't know about what that flavor is going to look like, but these are, again, possibilities of what to do with this really expansive, grand approach. And I think they're looking at something, they being the actual officials, they want to do something that's extremely unique and has a lasting value that you just don't visit once, but there's something about it you want to come back, and there's a draw to it that makes it very unique. And I think, again, it might not become part of the mix at all, but it can be extremely powerful in terms of putting together the right materials for a covered bridge or a bridging system, other than just a highway going across the actual location to the north and to the south, but actually putting a bridgeway, even if it's just on the one side, for example, if you put a bridge, a unique bridge across the river on this major artery here going back into the city, wouldn't that be cool? So that's what these sketches are motivated to kind of convey here to the client base. Again, these are little quick ballpoint pen sketches on just elevation studies about bridge design. So let's go through a series of these. Here's another little detail where it's much more railroad bridge or classic Americana, where you come back in, for example, where you come back into the slope of the river and then you build this tower across and come back into the other side. That's another approach of looking at a bridge system, and it's very truss related. It's much more of like powdered metal and so forth, or done on steel. A little detail of the tower itself. Once you arrive into that area, come back and turn into the actual subdivision itself. Just a little detail of what that structure might look like. So that's another aspect of it. There's a little further study on that, looking at it, for example, as a half section. Again, here's the landscape coming into the river itself. Here's the actual tower system coming over the actual river itself. into an entry area, for example, it can be kind of unique. Maybe it's a visitor center of some sort to come into. But again, notice it's open air. This could be all glass. It could be all translucent. It could be polyethylene of some sort of a plastic substrate that's transparent. But again, giving it uniqueness. It could be lit too, illuminated at night and evening. It could really be cool. So there's another variation in that thing. Here's another little study of it here. This is like a covered bridge area. And notice again, walkway along the river, kind of coming out for the actual site itself, down into the river, into the area where you walk along the river, come back along the concourse, and back up into the actual park site itself. This would all take place at this end, for example. Let's go back. This all would happen at this end of the actual site itself, which we'll detail in a moment here. So these are interesting things in terms of putting together the process of what is taking place in this park. Let me get this all the sketch lined up. There we are. Again, the actual bridge system coming across the river to me would be extremely, very, very unique. It could be extremely powerful, giving this place this site some real prominence in terms of being unique. Again, this could be all translucent material. Again, it's trussed. Traffic would go through that. You can actually see through it, be very transparent. Again, another approach is just a little thumbnail study here, and then they go a little further with it. This one might look like on the plan view. For example, on one side of the river, you've got a roundabout. You come through it, for example, into another roundabout and enter the actual site plan, which is right here. So that's another. And then looking at, for example, what this might look like from coming in and approaching the actual park itself. Maybe it's a series of columns or illuminated pillars that go around the entire roundabout, for example, whether it's here or over here, where I think it might be probably best when you enter the park itself. You come into this roundabout, go into the park itself, and enjoy the festivities of what we're looking at. But the main thing is to maybe develop a little more uniqueness, not only just a bridge, but also a couple of roundabouts that really take advantage of unique design systems that make this location extremely unique unto itself. Now let's go back a little more of a detailed look at it perspective. Maybe a half section here, for example, going across where the stone would be into that little round into it, and this would be symmetrical. Notice here again, maybe it's a boulevard related piece that comes into a roundabout here, the signage up front. You come into the roundabout and go through, and as you enter back in again, for example, you come underneath this guy, there's a roundabout here, but then you're back into the actual site plan, which is up here. So a lot of variation in theme here, and again, my task here to work with this group is to give them as many options as we possibly can, with understanding that, yeah, we need something that's going to be very park related, yes, but how are we going to enhance it? What do we do, for example, with the perimeters and some of the peripheral areas to make it much more flattering in terms of a draw, a national draw that makes this town very worthy of its commendation of putting this park together. So there's another, going back, there's some that had to deal with bridging and so forth, and some of the things we're dealing with there. And last but not least, here's a little perspective study of what that might look like in terms of getting into full color. Coming in, for example, across the river itself into the roundabout, and this is all part of this upper portion there would be a part of the northern section of the site we just showed you. But again, notice you're coming into it, into the roundabout, and into the area here. Now notice the bridge itself, maybe all brick, and it's very traditional, very colonial looking. That's another aspect that might be looking at. And then this little window piece here is like once you're into the site, you can go walk off the bridge, go underneath it, and travel along the river for sightseeing and so forth, or other areas you want to visit while you're in that area. So that's a big, and again, an elevation study of what that might look like coming across that the river itself, which is here. And the roundabout would be at this end, obviously, and then also the entry, another roundabout at the other end down here too. So very much of an expansive process. It's a very unique set of circumstances to deal with here. A lot of fun, a lot of range, for example. Again, going back through the review here, once we revisited this thing from a landscape architectural piece, the review is such that we submitted those sketches some time ago, I think back in, May, June. They looked at those 4 variations, the first site plans we showed you. They selected something. Now, from my point of view, taking that selection, that's element number 2, let's go back to that one, taking this guy, and begin to go back in and really flatter certain areas within the actual site itself with what we just showed you, for example, entryway, gateway features, lighting, bridges, things of that nature to kind of bring some real attention to what we're developing here. And then this last little sketch we just showed you here was the overview of that one last study we did. Not so much a covered bridge, but just a nice little boulevard piece that goes into the actual site itself. The boulevard is backing through here, if you can see it or not. But it's opened up through the entire course of the river, and then all of a sudden it opens into a boulevard, into the roundabout, and then into the actual space itself. So that takes care of that aspect of it. And last but not least, one of the things we looked at too was what the possibility of doing some areas, for example, like historical areas, information centers, pieces that might become part of the architectural plan in terms of not only just the features of the materials in the park, like entry, lighting, and so on, but some place where maybe it's retail, maybe it's historical. I'm going to go back to this sketch and show you where that would fall. These sketches I'm about to show you would happen right in through here. On the current site, for example, there are, at present time, there are a couple of buildings here, but they're pretty well dilapidated in terms of use and longevity here. Notice we stopped the actual entry egress at this little sidewalk area here. Now, if this clears out, this could be an ideal area, for example, for pieces I'm just about to show you here. And getting into, for example, maybe it's a historical area, maybe it's a retail space, maybe it's a combination of both. That could happen both at this end, and as we showed you in one of the theme sketches, that little bit of an amphitheater back here, that could have like an outbuilding as well to accommodate what we need to develop here. So let's go back to this just for a second. Here's a first pass at just a basic overview sketch of coming back into an area. Maybe this is a welcome center, maybe it's an open amphitheater where this historical pieces are being displayed, or certain things or questions are being asked. It could also be very simple little tent-like approach, fabric upper on it, or it could be an actual tin roof. That's to be determined yet. The materials have not yet been determined, but the actual themes of what we're looking at, for example, is a welcome center, for example. Notice the big W in here. Maybe it's stepped up, or maybe it's just corrugated pavers and so forth. But again, it's surrounded by trees, and it's up in that upper northern corner, maybe close to the river, which would be out here in essence. So that could be kind of a neat little approach. So that's one approach to, here's an elevation study of what that might look like in terms of coming into it. There's a little flagging device, and then there's the actual roof itself. That could also be just blistered off and rounded off as well. But it's, again, another way to look at a different, it's a very simple, easy to build a theater of some sort that accommodates what the needs are going to be. And those needs are going to have to be determined yet. I'm just assuming here that it could be informational, it could be retail space related, it could be a combination of both. It might be invitational graphics, it could be interactive graphics. We don't know that yet, but at least we've got some thoughts put together on what that might become, possibly might become. And again, another approach here is maybe it's like gathering places. What do these begin to look like? We can go into certain things like very traditional towers where you've got a lawn space or a green space or some sort of a quiet zone within the actual site itself. These kind of things, this approach could happen in areas like these, blank areas up around the actual piece itself, or also near the amphitheater or something, or the river overview. Look, that could be kind of nice to kind of go back in and look at what we're looking for here is something that's a little more restful. Maybe it's a little more traditional European in nature. I'm just covering a lot of ground from a design perspective based on not knowing at this stage of the game what the theme is going to be. Is it going to be American traditional? Is it going to be colonial? Will it be contemporary? Those are being determined by the individuals we're dealing with here. So that's all part of the game plan as well. And I think it's unique is what's really interesting too, is that again, to provide some sort of green space, a lot of foliage around the area, just a calming presence where people come and sit down and rest and then look at the actual site throughout the park itself. Then in this last sketch here, let's look at this, if I get these separated here. It's another approach at looking at within that same complex we just showed you. For example, a little bit of fencing, some sculptural pieces, and again, some benching areas to be sit down and just take a relaxing area, and to begin to look at what the overall impact of this. And again, this could happen throughout the park in certain areas where this needs to be designated. For example, let's go back to this. This could happen. These pieces here could happen, for example, along and through here. It could be all fenced off. It could be a nice little area of private benching and so forth for people to rest and to take advantage of the time involved and putting the pieces together. So I think that gives you a really good solid overview about where we are at this stage of the game with this very dramatic looking park design theme. And let me get this out of the way and go back to this just for a moment. Go back to these original site plans. Just going to bring these into play one more time to wrap it up here. What's really been unique about this is this is the sketches we did. The first one, as I said, as we started the presentation, it was the overall theme. Yeah, we wanted organic. We wanted very fluid, very non-linear piece, and not so geometric, but very sculptural. Lots of plantings and lots of garden areas. So the first approach was a little bit clumsy in terms of getting this pinwheel. I had the idea of putting some sort of a nice surround in an easy access area that could take you in 3 directions at the same time. This one obviously did not do it. It was partially there, but not quite fully. Then all of a sudden, the second sketch we did was this one. All of a sudden, this was the one I thought really had all the horsepower behind it, because it really had a unique approach to it in terms of looking at coming in, going to the retail area when it's constructed, and moving into an area for the rest of the parkway to get easy access both in and out of that thing. So that was the one that I think was a favorite piece. Then the third sketch we did was a variation on it as well. Not quite as dramatic, but at the same time getting the job done. A little bit clumsy through here as far as entry goes, and again, I didn't care for this. Probably a little bit fractured in terms of coming into the actual focal point area, then out into retail on the river space, you come back into retail here, as opposed to, look how simple this one is. You come right back out of it and you go right back into that area for information, etc., or whatever we're going to end up building in that portion of the actual structure itself. So, and then again, very fluid, a lot of it. Again, the unique thing about this study was the amphitheater at the tail section at the south end of the site. That might be a good note to work with. Then again, they might put all their funding into something out here that's much more of an overview than the rear view. So we'll see what happens here. And then the last one we did was to come back in, for example, and looked at what that pinwheel looks like from an overall perspective. Now, the scale is pretty close to where we are here. That's that major residential street coming through. I'm not quite happy with how this is looking here yet. I think we can do a little more investigating into this. But again, it's a little bit exaggerated as far as elevation goes. I could see this thing going up maybe about 18 inches. That's out of scale here, obviously. I overstated the elevation here to let the people see that it was elevated, and you get access wide enough for access for handicapped people or walkability to go up to the actual focus area, out of it into retail, and out of it into the park. So that to me, I think, was a very unique approach to. I've not seen that before. And again, these secondary pathways coming out of it and into the park itself, I think, are going to be extremely helpful once we get all the pieces put together. So we're waiting on some word now on feedback on where we are with the overall site plan, which is back to this guy. And once we get that squared away, then we can start attacking some of these pieces I just showed you throughout the course of the presentation here today. So hopefully this has been some education for you as much as it has been for me. Now again, I'll repeat myself. I think what I really think is unique about landscape architectural design is it's such a unique discipline from the point of view of being able to look at certain things from its different textures, different appliances of materials, different ways of, and again, the newness in all this material is just, the progress being made in some of the advances of materials technology and landscape architecture is just phenomenal. One of the things I'm looking forward to, for example, working with a group now when it comes to, for example, materials, there's a Corten. There's a material called Corten that can be it's almost like it oxidizes over time, but also can be done, for example, you can utilize that same material and put lighting into it, like light emitting diodes, or you can put filament lighting into it. Things like that are really going to be adventuresome for this site to be looking at from the point of view of adding new materials, but yet still maintaining, as I stated earlier, still maintaining what the flavor of this whole concept is going to become. As stated yet, from what I'm gathering, the overall site will maintain a certain amount of, for lack of a better term, traditional look to it. Now, what's that traditional look going to appear to be? Will it be much more, it'll be a little bit more avant-garde in some areas? Will it be much more materials related, a little bit more avant or newness? That's yet to be seen. But I think the overall progress that we've been making here has really been very, very effective. And I'm pleased to announce that to date, they're very pleased with the overall progress we're making with this park itself. So there's a lot more enthusiasm in the area now because they start to see some of the work that we're doing to put it out there in the press. They're getting a lot of reviews in terms of yeas and nays and likes and dislikes, more likes than dislikes, thank God. But at the same time, I think that's the unique thing about the entire process of working with the communities, where you get to work with marvelous people individuals who understand that the heritage of the area that we're dealing with, what the purpose of the park is, really very paramount. And a lot of good conversation back and forth with individuals within the system here have been extremely, very extremely helpful for me. So that I'm in the rails, so to speak, and I'm actually focusing the design concepts based on their input. And at the same time, they've given me enough latitude to go back into some areas. I just showed you some of the sketches here in this presentation today to be extremely powerful and open up the doors a little bit and let them see that this is a possibility, this could be a possibility, and yet not restricting ourselves with, oh, I see, you want to keep it sedate. Well, I've got to say this too, and I think I'm one to really honor someone's input, but at the same time, I'm going to honor that input, but at the same time, give them options 1 through 6 or 1 through 8, so they can see what else is available there. I think anything less than that, I think, is an absolute reproach. I've never been one to say that, boy, let's just keep it confined. I think that's an absolute creative mistake. You confine it by doing the following. You confine it by literally listening to and addressing the issues of the people that are concerned about. Done. I fully understand that. But at the same time, you can take a look at that confinement and say, well, then what your context is, you can take that into this lattice and into this lattice, into this lattice. And all of a sudden, the education cycle becomes a two-way street. So you're not restricting anybody, but you're opening up the avenue of thought and creativity for them to really evaluate. So again, very dramatic. And I love the discipline. If I could, day to day, I'd be doing this more and more often. I love the fact that I'm dealing with these people and also with this process. Landscape architecture is unique. I hope this has been of some interest to you today, as much as it has been to me. And by all means, if there's any interest in terms of what you would like to have me work with in future term, please drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. I'd love to hear from you about what you think about the program, what you thought about today's presentation, for example, and above all else, what things I could work on, for example, to be of assistance to you, whether it's in architecture, product design, transportation design, matters not to me, but I just really would like to hear from you in terms of what you're after. And also, if you're interested in some drawing programs and some basic studies in terms of sketch rendering skills, please visit my website at drcontrast.com. You'll see a series of lessons there, 9 lessons on everything from perspective all the way through to presentation pieces that I hope you'll enjoy, and please pass along the word. Greatly appreciate it if you do that. And then last but not least, I just think it's really important that we really make this announcement for everybody's benefit, that we'll keep you posted on the progress on this park design as things come unfold, and maybe in future reference I'll start doing maybe some live Twitch series on what we've got as far as input goes, and see how that comes together. I'm sure when it comes down to maybe some final renderings, I'll make sure I put that on my Twitch repertoire to make sure you get to see how the whole thing began to unfold and what elements were selected and what was chosen as far as the actual theme is concerned, and all the things we talked about today in today's stream. So very interesting setup here, guys, today. So thank you so much, and really love the fact that we've had a chance to look at this and expand upon the initial concept sketches of some time ago. So a lot of progress is being made, and as we speak, I'm sure certain things are being done now internally to kind of take the next step and the next steps in direction as far as where we want to take this guy. So above all else, I just wish you all the very best. I just really think it's great that you've had a chance to chat today about this. And again, once again, please visit my website at drcontrast.com, and any notes you want to bring along, for example, or things you were interested in, drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. I'd love to hear from you. That's what makes this program interesting and intriguing to me, and it's inspiring to hear from you as well. So all that to say that in closing, I think the most important part of the whole process today is this, that never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. It's been really great to be with you today. Thanks so much. All the best, and we'll see you on Thursday, same time, 2 o'clock. Thank you. Bye-bye now.